Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you are in. Welcome to Breakthrough with Media U. I'm Adam Leipzig. It is a pleasure to be here with you. We have an amazing guest today. The purpose of Breakthrough with Media U is mentoring. Information is one thing, but guidance, career guidance, the value that we get from people who have walked down the road before us is invaluable. It's been completely invaluable in my career. It's the reason that I've been able to have a career because people who had done it before lent out their hand to me and said, "Here's how it's done." And they were patient with me, never judgmental, and explained over and over and down again until I finally got it. And then I was able to do it myself. And today we have a pretty amazing guest. The purpose of these sessions is that they are accelerated. This is a 30-minute session. If you are here live, if you have a question, put it into the chat now because we only have 30 minutes. If you want to get a question in, please get it in early. And today we are talking with a friend, an advisor to MediaU, a mentor to many of us because of the films that he has made. Terry George, writer and director of The Boxer, In the Name of the Father, Hotel Rwanda, The Promise. We could go on and on and on. And Terry, hello. Welcome to Breakthrough.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
I, I should say to everybody that Terry is very generous in being here with us today because it's not COVID, but he did come down with the flu yesterday and he did not cancel on us because Terry is a true pro.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you for being with us today.
yeah. I had amoebic dysentery on the set of Bright Shining Lie and had to sit in the director's chair on the last day. So this is nothing.
That's
Anyway,
something. Yeah, Terry,
yeah.
that's something that people don't often think about is the physical rigor of doing what we do. We think about the intellectual rigor. We think about writing a script and developing it over
Mm,
years and years and years. But just physically being on a set and directing something or producing something or being a grip, it's really hard.
yeah, it is. It's physically and mentally taxing, and you really have to pace yourself. And Michael Mann said to me once that on the set of Luck, you have to be intellectually rigorous and also physically rigorous as well, because it's hard work.
Terry, we're going to get into mentoring in just a
Mm.
minute. I'd love to, the audience that we have here, both live and the people who will be seeing this in the replay, are people who are early career. Some of them are mid-career.
Mm.
They are aspiring to be or working at early features as screenwriters and directors. So this is who we're talking to today. And to all of you, welcome. It's really good to have you here. Um, Maybe you could just start by talking about uh, how people could think about the capacity, the limitations that they have. If you could give a first tip of mentoring advice.
Yeah, well, I think particularly today, as the medium evolves, you know, first time and developing directors, writers, aspiring writers, directors, they really have to be honest and know their limitations with that first project or that project that they're trying to get off the ground. And what I mean by that is that there's no point in writing a screenplay or a script that has a budget of 30 million or 100 million or whatever. It's just that that's basically that script will be recycling paper. You really have to know what your capacity is within a story, how much you're able to raise to make it, how to compress the story in order to make an independent film on a small, thread budget that uh, and I think that rather than be afraid of this, that you should embrace the fact that you're challenged with having very little money, uh, having to wrangle crew, having to beg actors, and so forth. I think if you embrace that and look for ways to tell the story within the budget and within the framework that you have, you can actually make a great film. You know, and I'm thinking of films like Room, Lenny Abrahams's Room, which was basically set in a room. There was a couple of scenes outside it when the family escaped, but that was it. Locke, Stephen Knight's great movie with Tom Hardy, which was in a car with just Tom Hardy, and it was truly
Hmm.
good. And then, you know, the 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 lottery winner of them all, the Blair Witch Project. All of those films embraced the fact that they had very little money, very little time, and had to come up with a unique way of telling their story. And I think that that great honesty by the director writer, uh, and being looking at the script and being careful about what it's going to cost, how best you can minimize cost and maximize story is an essential part of independent filmmaking today. And that requires great self-criticism and honesty. And I think that's even more important than it was 20 years ago.
It's interesting when you talk about knowing your limitations, that you're really talking about the kind of understanding the limitations of the business, the limitations of what resources are really going to come to you.
Yeah.
That a streamer is not going to come and drop $100 million on your lap in your first feature. So it's understanding those production limitations, but it also seems as though as those production limitations ratchet down to say you can shoot a movie in a car, in a room, something very confined, that the creative limitations expand because you have to be extra creative to be able to do that and make it compelling to watch for 90 or 100 minutes.
No, exactly. And with the development of technology today, we, you know, with the cameras that we have available, with the editing tools that are available, with the VFX and so forth, you can make a strong movie, a powerful movie, a visually challenging movie on a limited budget. And that's what you have to do today because the independent film industry has shrunk completely. I think there are now only two independent film distributors in the United States. Um, and it's really very, very hard to break into the market outside of the film festival circuit, which is
Mm.
where you want to go. And so, um, sorry, and the other challenge is to remember that this is a commercial enterprise, that you either taking money from someone or using your own money or whatever it is um, to make a profit. That your first obligation is to put asses in seats. It's not to put your therapy on screen. If you
Yeah.
want to do that, go and write a book or go to see a psychiatrist. Do not put your therapy on screen. Unless you're a genius, that is not going to work,
Hmm.
and you'll waste a lot of people's money. You've got to say, how can I attract the maximum audience to this story, and what's my selling point, and how do I get the investors' money back? So keep in mind, it is a commercial enterprise.
One of the things that you mentioned when we were just talking a moment ago about the expansion of creative needs as the production needs close in around you, you talked about thinking visually, uh, maybe thinking universally. Could you talk about that a little bit as a
Yeah,
mentoring tip?
yeah. I mean, that's when you've written a script in a first draft, second draft, or whatever, and or you've been presented a script as a director who's going to direct someone else's work. This is a visual medium. You have to sit down and look at the script and say, how can I tell this story, not with a minimum of dialogue, but where I can use dialogue in the most effective way and yet tell the story visually. Go through the whole script and see And what are the, I mean, the great cinematographers that I've worked with, you will see them after they do a shot go off with the camera and pick up a hand on a table or a cigarette lighter or some, the the cliche trees blowing in the wind, whatever. But that all of that needs to be taken into consideration. You have to sit down and think visual. After having written your script, think visually. Then you have to go back and think universally. And what I mean by that is, how do you tell a story that will play in Beijing, Belfast, and Baltimore? You look for the universal story within your stories itself. In Hotel Rwanda, it was basically a man under siege who's desperate to save his own family. And that family expands to the point where he has to save all these people in the hotel. That's a universal story. And as we know, there are, if you go to the great story analysts, Joseph Campbell and all these people, you'll see that there are basically 5 or 6 hero stories, and so there are universals around, and you want to tap into that, but it can be a very local story. Well, Hotel Rwanda was, I mean, extremely local. I had the challenge of trying to explain the politics of Rwanda to a worldwide audience, something that many journalists and all were flunked on. But what I had there when I did Hotel Rwanda, one of the things that worked for me, the extremists, the Interhamwe, luckily for me, wore these outrageously colorful uniforms.
Mm.
Um, and so I was able to, the UN soldiers wore the famous blue beret. So I had visual elements of the storytelling that really helped me get across, oh, the bad guys have arrived, the good guys have arrived, we're not sure about who these guys are. And these are all things that if you look at, question your script all the time. How can I tell this visually? How can I explain something visually to the audience in a unique way that will also grip the audience, and at the same time, how can I create a universal story even within a local story? And
Mm.
that's by appealing to the humanity of the audience.
We work in a global industry where when we make a film,
More
we
and more.
make a streaming show. Our audience isn't hyper local or even national. Our audience is really global for for it
Indeed.
to
Yeah.
succeed. And to go back to that first principle you talked about, which is we got to get butts in seats, we got to get eyeballs on the screen, and we have to get enough of them worldwide so we get our investors back enough money so we can make our next project.
Exactly that. And the way to do that is to entertain people. And by that I mean my analysis of the word entertainment is very broad. I don't. It's not just uh, bang bang and explosions on screen and sort of questionable jokes and comedy. Its entertainment is about challenging the senses of the audience, making them find empathy, anger, sadness, joy. All of those senses need to be tapped into. And I think that the best movies, if you look at the great movies, they look to tap into those sentiments within us. Schindler's List, The
Hmm.
Killing Fields, My Left Foot, they all are about empathy and stimulation of those emotions.
If somebody wants to really energize their creative career and what they're doing, how does theater? What advice would you give about that? How does theater play into that?
Well, personally, it's the way I got into film through the Irish Arts Centre, where I went and worked with Jim Sheridan and wrote some plays and was the artistic director. But the thing about uh, the business today, particularly, is that writing a script and sending it to agencies and sending it around is as pointless an exercise as I can think of, unless you have a very high powered agent and you have a track record and you have an access to the streamers today. It's almost impossible to get a script. A script by a first-time writer director is basically recyclable paper. They'll throw it in a bin. So
Mm.
how do you break out of that syndrome? And I think that theater, whether it be regional, college, community theater, whatever it is, gives you access to the collaborative nature of film and television making. Because if you join a theater group, in whatever capacity it may be, or persuade them to put on your play or whatever, you're going to meet and work with, the costume designer, the lighting designer, the production manager, the actors, the publicity person, the whole gambit of what you need in this collaborative world to get your story told. And then, maybe maybe they'll put on a play for you. Maybe you're just helping in the theater or whatever. But you at least have access to a community, a group where you can say, "Hey, I've got this story. Any interest in maybe filming this, having a reading on screen, or whatever?" It's a collaborative entertainment. It's a collaborative business, and you have to embrace that. I mean, I
The
think
collab.
I said to you earlier, the days of, the Rocky script where a great script lands in and Sylvester Stallone is able to hold on it are gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, collaboration is so key. We're doing this on the morning of Saturday, December 3rd.
Mm.
I was just watching the Netherlands U.S. Game on the World Cup,
Yes, indeed.
where the Netherlands uh,
Yeah. Collaborated
basically,
better.
yeah, collaborated better. Well, this is the thing. There are a lot of post game commentary about what the U.S. should have done, what the Netherlands did, who the U.S. should
Mm.
have put in, et cetera. And obviously, the Netherlands has some amazing star players.
Yeah.
But what completely impressed me was their passing game. Their passing, the
Yeah,
way
they're I
they
mean,
share the ball. It's incredible. I think
yeah.
that's why they won. That's why they're a great team. They
Yeah,
share the
they're
ball.
among the best in the world, and USA was great. They just didn't have the finishing power that the Netherlands has, and and those great players that they have access to. But they'll get there. But yeah, collaboration is what it's all about in our business. Again, if you have a story that you insist that has to be told in a certain way, and you're rigid about it, then write a book or whatever. You know, don't don't get involved in the collaborative process unless you're able to collaborate and take information and take criticism particularly. My rule of thumb is if five people that I trust say there's a problem with the film, there's a problem with the film.
Yeah,
That's it.
you
And
got
I
to be
don't,
ready
and
to hear
I,
that.
yeah, no, I mean, and if you go to a test screening and that bunch of people say there's a problem with the film, maybe 20 or 30 of them, you better take a good look at that because, self-delusion is the biggest, not crime, drawback in our business. It's why there's a lot of shit on TV and in the cinema. It's like, oh, this will work and we'll just shoot it and we'll market it, you know? So be as an independent filmmakers don't have that luxury. Well,
Yeah.
they don't have the luxury of a big PR firm and a big media machine behind them. They have to be self-critical to a fault.
We have a couple of questions that have come in, and one of them
Yeah.
really resonates with what we've talked about because you've talked about how the business, a creative business, is now versus how it had been previously. Uh, One of our members has asked, in the course of your career, have you had to reinvent yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I went from theater, Irish theater, um, to three movies about the Northern Ireland Troubles, to American movies, to Bright Shining Light, which was the Vietnam War movie with Bill Paxton, to Hotel Rwanda, to The District, the TV show that I was the showrunner on, to Luck, to The Promise. And in doing that, that that was a transformation because I had to embrace a wider cultural view, and embrace a different film culture. Because the Irish, In the Name of the Father, Boxer, Some of the Son, film culture was, we're going to do this. We're going to knock down walls. We're going to stay up all night. We're going to do this till we get it right, and that's it, And everybody pitches in that great independent film way. Once you get into the studio setup, it then becomes a business. People have other lives besides your story, and you have to accommodate them, and you have a wider scope, and culturally, that was a transformation that I had to be able to adapt to. Yeah, and a learning curve.
Goes to that mentoring tip you gave about thinking universally.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. And at the same time, but also keeping that universality. Because within the name of the Father again, Jim Sheridan and I, we're always telling stories about the ordinary man who triumphs over evil.
Mm.
That's an ordinary man or woman. And in
Hmm.
some mother son's case, it was the mothers of hunger strikers. That's the stories we look for, human stories, and mostly nonfiction. Because I've tried it, but I can't live in the realm of total science fiction.
Mm.
I need a base of reality, and to go back to it. It goes back to my days in journalism. I started off in the United States as a journalist. But yeah, so that, and I think that for first time film makers, writers, finding those human stories within their community and trying to tell that story in a universal way fulfills that challenge about universality. If you can find a story in your local community or in the newspapers or whatever that you think is worth telling within the constraints of what I talked about, then that's a great way to start. Because I have always found that with nonfiction stories, you're thankfully constrained by the facts themselves. You don't have to reinvent the world, or you don't have to have the aliens show up in the second act or whatever. You've got a story to tell, and within that story, it's tapping into the humanity of it. And
Mm.
Jim Sheridan and I always said that what we do is we take human stories and we distill them down to their essence and put them on screen. It's the equivalent of from taking from wine into brandy or whatever. You're distilling a story down into its essence and then presenting it to an audience.
We have time for one more
Okay, sure.
question from our members, and this one feels really relevant because you just talked about finding the story. The question then is, how do you move from that point? Um, and our member asks, what's the thing that most people do wrong when they're pitching their projects? You've got your story, you've got it figured out, but how do you convey it well, or what mistakes should you avoid when you are bringing in collaborators or financiers? What mentoring could you give for that
Well,
too?
I think in today's world, it's very hard for an independent filmmaker to get in the pitch cycle with the streamers or whatever, unless they've thought extremely creatively and gone out and shot a show reel or a segment of their film, and showed what's unique about it and have a presentation, whether that be a pitch deck or a trailer or whatever. You've got to really you've got to get beyond the script and beyond the dry pitch to show that this again is a commercial reality for people. um, and that goes back to my whole thing about being involved in theater or the community of filmmakers, because you're going to need to tap into people, a good camera person, someone who can help you do that with a trailer, whether or somebody who does animation and can do some sort of visualization for you. I think you have to have a very sort of compelling package today.
So I heard you use the word dry. So it sounds like it's got to be wet. It's got
What?
It's got to be wet and juicy.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. No, it has. I mean, you're asking people to give you their money, and so they ultimately we're back to that commercial thing of, okay, we can make this a success. And look, you can promise them the Academy Award all you want. You know, that's the hard road to go down. It is. I mean, it is something. A short film, which I love. Uh, is obviously a way to go for people developing their career. Making a short film is a hell of a lot easier than a feature, and the budget is much easier. And and I did it with The Shore, and because I knew I had a story that would tap into that universality and entertain. I had an entertaining story, and I was pretty positive about that story from the start. I told my agent we were going to go pretty far with it, and he was like, short film, okay, well, call me when you've got this out of your system.
Yeah, and you went all the way with it.
Indeed, yeah, yeah, and you
You won
can.
the Academy Award for it.
Yeah, yeah, and and that so in the short film genre, you can aspire to that. Now more and more the studios and all have started to move into the short film genre, but it's still available to independent filmmakers, and you can take that short film and then expand it into the feature. You've got the perfect calling card for your feature film.
That is, Terry. That's feels like a great way to summarize and wrap up
Hmm.
what we have been
Oh,
talking about today. I'm really grateful. I'm also grateful to all the members who are joining us now live and also will be joining us on the replay. And remember, you can sign up at MediaU.com for these free Breakthrough with MediaU sessions. We're always happy to have you, happy to have your questions, also happy to have your suggestions on who to invite and who you'd like to get mentoring from. Terry, do you have a last word of either discouragement or encouragement or wisdom or counsel that you would like
no,
to leave people
I
with?
mean it has to be encouragement. Look, technology and the world is evolving so rapidly that it's hard for an old guy like me to keep up with it. I just stick to telling a good story. But I think younger filmmakers can embrace the where we are at the moment. And I know that the attention span has shrunk. The TikTok of it all, the Instagram, but embrace that as well, because within that is the nucleus of a good story. If you find a good TikTok item and you think you can expand that into a short film or whatever, or that idea or some idea version, embrace it. Yep.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for your time. Hope you
Thanks,
feel
Adam.
really all better soon, super soon, and you can get back to writing the. I think you
Yeah.
told me you're working on at least 5 projects right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am indeed. Yeah, the balls are. You have to keep all the balls in the air. You never know when something will click.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck, and may the muse hover lovingly over your shoulders as those balls are up in the air.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you,
and
Adam.
to everybody who is streaming with us and watching on the
Yeah,
replay, thank you for joining us. We'll see you the next time, and we're so happy to have you as members of the Media U community.
great. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.